Welcome ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dychronic, you're here on this Destiny 2 video, and today we're going to be taking a look at my top 10 PvE primaries in Destiny 2 Season of the Deep. And of course, as always, I have made a spreadsheet for this video, which can still be found in the description down below on my Discord, on the channel #SpreadsheetsDocs. And truly, these spreadsheets would not be possible without your support on Patreon. Without your continued support, I may have to stop making spreadsheets and may end up having to end my channel entirely. But if you want to see them continue, please consider checking it out. If only 0.1% of you gave $10 a month, I'd be able to make minimum wage. And honestly, that's worth it if I can do what I love. And if that hasn't convinced you, there are cute animals on screen right now. And at the very least, hopefully it makes your day a little bit more positive. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. On screen right now, this is my spreadsheet. Dark theme, color-coded, pictures, recommendations, catalyst information, everything that you probably want about these weapons. For obviously all the weapons I was considering, only about 200 some weapons. There are thousands in this game, and this is the stuff that we're going to be using and referencing throughout this video. And if you've never seen my videos or my spreadsheets before, I know they can be quite confusing, which is why I've included a tutorial to the spreadsheets and Destiny 2 down in the description down below to help you understand why this information is so useful. Moving on, let's go ahead and get started. First up, at number 10, we have two exotic bows known as the Trinity Ghoul and Taku's Divination. In my opinion, one of the more fun weapons in the entire game and still incredibly effective. Trinity Ghoul is going to be a very special, very heavy ad control weapon coming from exotic engrams, especially with the catalyst and its lightning rod perk, where you just have to get an arc weapon kill with this weapon and you get lightning rod, which is literally jolted before jolted existed, which also triggers lightning rod, which means you can just continually shoot a jolted shot that kills lots of enemies and frankly again is a lot of fun, as well as being a bow, making it very useful for very long range. Taku's Divination, on the other hand, is going to be a bit more of a crowd control, major killing kind of weapon. This particular weapon comes now from the Exotic Archive, and it has a weird kind of lock-on ability that can then send very high damage, large explosion arrows towards your target. Both weapons have a place, and again, both are very fun. And for the legendary options, I personally prefer more towards the lightweight frames, faster fire rate, as long as you can get that accuracy up. And we do have a new one in the form of Tyranny of Heaven, which has the ability to have explosive head plus incandescent at the same time, which is so good. Following that at number 9, again, a weird eclectic group of weapons, we have the Traveler's Chosen Sidearm, and we have the Monte Carlo Auto Rifle. Both of which are exotic weapons, which are very specifically focused on getting your abilities back faster. The Monte Carlo is a 600 RPM auto rifle, which again is a very popular and useful kind of auto rifle, where any kind of weapon damage increases your melee ability regeneration, and any kills also improve that further, as well as extra damage for melee based stuff with it. TLDR, you get your melee abilities way faster, which can help you get your ability stuff as well. And it doesn't require a kill because just damage with it does give you your melee stuff back. On the other side, we have Traveler's Chosen, where any kill with the weapon, then reloading gives you all of your ability energy back, which again is a very dependable and easy way to get your ability energy. So if you have an ability based build, both of these weapons do have a place. I personally don't use these things nearly as much as I used to, but both again are really good options. Monte Carlo dropping from exotic engrams, and the Traveler's Chosen used to be an exotic quest, might be in the exotic archive now. Following that at number 8, we have the exotic hand cannon known as the Hawkmoon. Now this is one of my all-time favorite weapons, not only from Destiny 1, but in Destiny 2, in my opinion, is a very highly underrated weapon. First of all, as the 140 hand cannon, which is obviously one of my favorite types, is a very good above average hand cannon. But its exotic perk known as Paracausal Shot, every time you're getting headshots or kills with the weapon up to a stack of 7, you do more damage with that final shot. And if you get Paracausal times 7, that final shot does 75% of the damage of an Izanagi's times 4 honed edge with the catalyst shot, which Izanagi against Karl does like over 100,000 damage. So in an infinite ammo primary weapon, Hawkmoon can deal 75% of that damage just by landing headshots. That's really good. The one downside, other than the fact that it's a hand cannon, and most people are not a big fan of the hand cannons, is that we do now have heavy machine guns taking over the fray of total ammo damage. So we don't need Hawkmoon nearly as much as we used to, but I still think it's an incredible option. Not only again for being an above average hand cannon and having that incredibly high damage, major and boss slaying shot. Especially with the Zur coming with random rolls every week, just wait for a decent roll, which in my opinion is probably going to be rangefinder, and you got yourself an incredible hand cannon. And if you've never really used hand cannons that much before, Hawkmoon is going to be a great introduction. Following that at number 7, over at the pulse rifles, we have the Adaptive Frame 390 pulse rifles. In my opinion, probably one of the most dependable and probably most versatile weapon types in the entire game. It can handle everything from close range to decently long range with its good control, handling, stability, recoil direction, range, perks, availability, etc, etc. And furthermore, it's easy to use and simple to understand. It's a burst burst fire option. And although we do have 2 craftable options, we don't currently have an energy craftable option, but we'll probably see that soon. TLDR, if you don't know what to use, these are the ultimate default option and can very easily last in Grandmaster Nightfall. And in this particular list, there are a lot of different options from different places, including Kingsfall Raid, Iron Banner, from World Drops, Gambit, etc. Your best option is probably going to be Syncopation since it's a World Drop and a craftable. More specifically, I think probably from the Throne World. Following that at number 6, we have the Scout Rifles, more specifically the Precision 180s and the Lightweight 200s. In my opinion, when it comes to long range or even the highest level difficulties, these are going to be great go-to options, reaching out to pretty much the longest possible range you'll ever need in any activity, which is part of why bows aren't as popular, because infinite range doesn't really necessary compared to these options. And almost every single one of these options can have something called explosive payload, which I have said many times is the #1 best PvE primary ammo perk in the game, almost hands down. If it's possible, I almost every single time get that perk on these kinds of weapons, or any kind of weapon that can have it. And why is that? First of all, it cuts down the range drop-off in half. It also increases the damage for body shot and headshot pretty considerably. It also flinches the target, allows you to accidentally hit targets. It's just an amazing dual perk, and there's literally no downside to it, which is part of the reason why I'm not favoring towards the rapid fires, because none of the rapid fire frame scout rifles can actually have explosive payload. So even though rapid fires are somewhat of a fan favorite, like Trusty or Servant Leader, or even now Randy's throwing knife, none of them have explosive payload, and they definitely require you to be a lot more sustained, more like an auto rifle, whereas these other scout rifles can peek in and out of cover a lot more effectively, which is another big part of scout rifles that's really useful, is they can go in and out of cover, maintaining their DPS output from long range and not being vulnerable, which is a theme that I'll talk about many times in this video. Because in the highest level play, your #1 goal is not dying, and being able to peek in and out of cover is very good. Following that, in the other kind of end of the spectrum, at number 5, we have the rapid fire pulse rifles. And although this is kind of the opposite of what I was just talking about, these things are an absolute destruction hound. They have very good DPS, they're very easy and simple to understand, as long as you can get their recoil direction closer to 100, maybe like 80 to 100, these things just feel absolutely amazing. We do have a new one in the form of Different Times, which is a strand version, which decent perks on it, but honestly, I fell in love with these types of weapons when Peace of Mind came out like over a year ago, with extra zoom, lots of great options, craftable so I can get exactly what I'm looking for, and of course Grid Skipper even longer before that was incredible as well. Essentially, these are the top DPS for pulse rifles. They feel good, and even though they are limited in range compared to other scout rifles and pulse rifles, they reach out to most of the range you're ever going to need in even the highest level activity. Again, especially if you can control that recoil pattern down. These days, your best options to getting one is probably going to be Different Times in the Deep Activity and Deep Engrams, or Outlast, which is from Deep Fishing and Deep Engram. Following that at number 4, we have a big fan favorite, the Osteostrigan, which is an SMG with a weird, slow traveling shot that does incredible poison damage to single targets that explode in poison against all the other targets, does pretty good damage against a single major target compared to other legendary submachine guns, and even does decent damage to boss stuff, which right now I think we have like an infinite damage glitch where you just swap to some Vorpal weapon or something, actually competing with Witherhoard for the amount of DPS it can deal, which admittedly DPS for Witherhoard is not high, it's a primary weapon, which is pretty cool. And this one used to be part of the Witch Queen Deluxe Edition, but I believe if you have Witch Queen, you can now get it from the archive. I would say the major downside of this weapon is that it feels like it's good at everything. You may not want to use your other weapons, but definitely make sure you understand how this weapon functions in your loadout, and don't just depend on it solely. Moving on, up next at number 3, we have the 140 RPM Adaptive Frame Hand Cannon. It's probably a bit more of a controversial pick because most people are not a big fan of hand cannons. First of all, for their higher skill floor, but they do have a very high skill ceiling. If you end up getting good with these weapons, getting those headshots at a pretty good amount of range that can handle anywhere from short mid to even long mid range, they become, in my opinion, not only one of the most satisfying weapons to use, but also some of the best option in even Grandmaster Nightfalls. And I hope to prove that here today. First of all, I've chosen the adaptive frames over the other options for a couple reasons. First of all, the 120s really suffer bad when it comes to handling and reload. By the time you even focus a little bit in range, the range advantage doesn't really matter. On the other side of the spectrum, the 180 RPM hand cannons obviously shoot a lot faster, are a lot less effective at peak shooting your enemy, and frankly still don't have nearly as much shots in a clip as they should compared to the 140s, which just seem that perfect middle zone of everything. Handling, stability, of range, perk options, craftability, they're just so goddamn amazing. Furthermore, there's a few very big and more important things about hand cannons that I really like. right. First of all, these 140 hand cannons can peak shoot very well, in and out of cover, maintaining that damage output, and again, because they can reach out all the way to mid-long range, you can do so pretty safely from cover. And probably the icing on the cake, one of the best parts about this is that most of these options can have explosive payload, which, as I've said before, is an absolute S+ tier perk. My personal favorite hand cannon is still absolutely gonna be Fatebringer. Having the ability to have explosive payload plus frenzy at the same time, both being damage perks, both helping with everything that you could possibly want with these weapons, and also being able to obviously have this in a depth version. Other than that, at 3A, I also have Osteostrigan, which is a very good craftable option, Ice Luna, which has Headstone, Exalted Truth with very good perks and very good stats, Palindrome, probably with the best total stat advantage, as well as good perks, and Rose as the only lightweight hand cannon in the game with good stats and good perks as well. Beyond that, there are other options which are decent enough, but those are my current favorite. If you're looking to just get into hand cannons, again, I would go to the Zur and get a Hawkmoon, but other than that, we do have the Apocalypse integration. Even though it's at 3C, it does have a guaranteed incandescent because it is a static roll, and the quest for it is very simple and very easy to do, and I would recommend it, although it doesn't have nearly as much range as I would want it to have. But it is a good introduction for these weapons. Following that, at number 2, we have the 720 rapid fire auto rifles. In my opinion, one of the most fun auto rifles in the game. And although I definitely supported the adaptive frame 600s for a long time, and I still think they're very good options, the 720s have definitely stolen my heart with the craftable Sweet Sorrow, Rufus's Fury, and of course, Quicksilver Storm, which is one of the best weapons in the game, hands down. Which originally released as a pre-order for Lightfall, and now can be obtained from the Exotic Archive if you own Lightfall. Now, this Quicksilver Storm is the thing I'm going to be talking about because it's just so good. First of all, as a 720, again, that fire rate that I really like, that crunches and it's almost submachine gun levels of damage output. Being an exotic, having exotic tier stats is very controllable, very high stability, very good recoil direction, and with that, it also has the micro mini rockets, where every once in a while, rockets fly out of your weapon and do a lot more damage. With that, as you're doing damage to the target, you build up these grenade launcher shots, which you can switch to and fire up to 3 of them, which do special ammo level damage. And that's not all. With the catalyst, it turns it into a strand weapon, which actually makes it so the grenade launcher shots can create tangles from its shots. And although these tangles are created with the same timer restriction of the other tangle creations, that's another way to make tangles from a weapon just by dealing damage, not getting kills. Well, I mean, dealing damage with the weapon and then getting kills with the grenade launcher, which is very feasible. So TLDR, very nice fire rate, very nice control. It has a lot of damage options, including a special damage grenade launcher, and it creates tangles. It's just so much fun and so good. Beyond that, the other 720s are just really solid weapons that can reach out to enough range if you can control their recoil direction, probably get it above 80. Even if you need a counterbalance stock, it is definitely worth it. And finally, at number 1, we still have all of the SMGs. Even though they did give buffs this season to pulse rifles, scout rifles, sidearms, so many different kinds of weapons, and tried to pull back the SMGs, I still think the SMGs are at number 1. First of all, for their incredible stopping power to just literally kill enemies before they can even damage you. As long as you can get that reload speed, that range, and that recoil direction going in your direction, you're going to be having so much fun with these weapons. That being said, I do think that some of the other options are probably one buff away from being on top. These are still, in my opinion, incredible weapon types. My personal favorite, obviously going to be the 750 aggressive frames and the 900 lightweight frames. Personal preference towards the aggressives because of their increased range. And with this, again, there's a lot of really good options that we've seen throughout the game. Currently, Rapacious Appetite is currently available in the deep activities. Funnel Web is an amazing world drop in the energy slot, which you see in the gunsmith all the time. And from the new dungeon, No Survivor, which actually has incandescent on it, which obviously is really good. As well as a lot of other perks like Headstone from Blood Feud or Ikelos with Volt Shot. And even though the Immortal lost 10 range, it's also still a really good weapon with rangefinder and target lock as a thing it can have. And of course, I want to give a big thank you to my patrons on Patreon. Specifically, big thank you to Mama Dad, Cape Shaw, Wafire, Prez, Joe Batten, Robert Strayer, James Osler, Ethan Hodges, Monty Armstrong, Monday, Stu Bachmers, Unipanther, Casey Reagan, William Peterson, and Benjamin for the support on Patreon. Again, if you like these videos and these spreadsheets, please consider checking them out in the description down below. Either way, I hope you guys did enjoy. My name is Dychronic, and I'll see you guys on the next one.